Hello, I am the Awkward GM Corbin, and we are covering Scion. God, I almost said Scion, like the car that a family member once owned, but that's not what we're talking about here today. Bookkeeping, just a little bit before we start off. We are very close for Onyx Path's latest crowdfunding campaign for Storypath Ultra to hit its next stretch goal. If you'd like to check that out, you can find it at the link that I've just put in the chat. You can also sign up for the Curseborn Kickstarter notification when it goes live next week, this exact day, Tuesday next week. There are a bunch of programs that are scheduled to go on at that exact around that time frame. There's a bunch of Curseborn stuff being set up. I, in particular, am doing a beginner's guide of the Curseborn manuscripts, which is going to be awesome. I'm very glad to have a chance to do that on this channel. Other than that, I don't think we have much going on. There's a Curseborn brochure that is going to be going live on the Drive-Thru RPG, so you can check that out. And you can also check out, what was it? A tasty bit, I think it was for Scion. I'm just going to check the Monday meeting notes real quick. And of course, I type it in wrong. Of course, I'm slow today. You can rub it in. Monday meeting notes, here we go. We have a bunch of stuff about Curseborn. We have some side reels artwork in here. The next thing is going to be about expanding. The next podcast episode is going to be about expanding the Storypath Ultra system with Curseborn. And then we have the source tasty bit for Scion Dragon, which has something to do with beating mighty wings. And that comes on Wednesday. In any case, thank you all for joining me here, and let's get on to the show, as it were. Now, Scion God is the third or fourth, maybe even fifth version of Scion. Of the main ones, there is the core rules for Scion, which is about pre-visitation Scions who are very close to being like mortal +1. They're just like slightly better than mortals. And then you have Scion Hero, Scion Demigod, and then you have God. And then there are the other two, which are sort of separate off, which are Dragon and... is it Shards of the Mythos? No, Mask of the Mythos, which is about Call of Cthulhu Pantheon. In any case, excuse me, Book 4 God is right here, and I'm very happy to have sort of lined up the cover really well with the overlay. It just sort of happened to work well, and I feel like I am extremely lucky in this regard. In any case, so sliding down here, we've got, it is Book 4 God. We have all these wonderful developers. Of course, Scion content lead Hiromi Koda. Hiromi, thank you for making great products. I really like what you've done with the Scion line. Additionally, there is a bunch of stuff about a bunch of the writers here who have done work on it. I'm not going to go through every single person who's here, but thank you all for bringing such a great product to this player base, I guess. There are even some special thank yous to Amelia Rubin for her help and knowledge and passion for the world's cultures, and to every indigenous storyteller, past and present, from every culture for keeping the stories alive. There is a even special land acknowledgement here. This book was written on the homelands of the Anishinaabe Potawatomi. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to say all these names correctly. Kosalish, Dene, Inskatambong, Ki Ka Poi, Lenape, Altanoa, Odawa, Olone, Piscalway, Saskatchewan, Tutelo, and Wampanoag, People's Lands. Our world is full of beautiful and wonderful place because of your hard work. To every future storyteller learning their people's language and stories for saving your people's knowledge from the erosion of time. From David Castro for L. Sandra Zays, Ralph Castro, and all other Tainos and Ricans who lead me here. This is all kind of wonderful. I'm glad to see this. And I'm glad to see like this getting shouted out. In any case, we're going to go through the table of contents a bit quickly. There is, of course, the introduction of how the book works. There's some fiction in here as well, spread throughout. You have how to use the book, the pantheons, what's in this book, media. There's some ready-made characters. You have the modes of storytelling, which talks about like sort of the themes, apotheosis, story guiding incarnations. Basically, this seems like another like story guide, game master bit of advice. It's funny that they have the story guiding chapter first. I think that might be because it seems I think it makes sense because this game is going to be covering a lot more powerful characters than we're used to with Scion. So maybe it's better to have that stuff up front so that the game master knows how to work with such powerful player characters. You have information about the game of the immortals, which is what happens with gods during their apotheosis as they become change from demigods into gods. Talks a little bit about titans, from what we can tell, incarnations, a god among mortals, incarnations and their gods, all the stuff, creating your own incarnations. Divine rule, these are the rules for running your own gods. Additional story guide advice. I guess this divine difficulties, enemy gods, and divine bystanders. Cults and religions. A new birthright. Additional stuff about religions. 3, we have the pantheons. I am not sure about all these pantheons here, but we will go over them in a bit. Possibly. Depends on how much time I have. Sadly, I'm not going to be doing a second episode of this next week because I'll be covering Curseborn for October. But a lot of interesting stuff here. We have the Balal of Thessays, the Ilhem of Phoenicia, the Ku of the Maya, and then the Palas of Buddhism, the Zemi of the Taino, and that was the last one. This is another chapter about a fiction, a story. And then you have Beyond Apotheosis. That's something I'd love to see. Creating your own pantheon. That's an interesting way to go from being a god to the leader of the gods. We have additional purviews, some birthrights, some knacks, some titanic knacks. That's interesting. Absolute dominion purviews. Okay, so you have like super powerful abilities. Pantheon specific purviews, of course, and then the overworlds, the god realms, the primordial realms. It seems like they put a lot in here, and it's only, I guess it's a little bit over 252 because that's the last bit of fiction there. And there are some new antagonists as well. I'm going to do my best to cover as much as this as possible. I'm really interested in seeing where Scion God 2nd edition goes. Thank you all for tuning into this, because this is the beginner's guide where I don't know what I'm talking about, but I am going through it with you. So how to use this book. Scion God is the final core book for the Scion 2nd edition. It is where we have the Scion Origin, Scion Hero, Scion Demigod, and now Scion God. I assume when it says final core book it's not the last book in the game line, not by long shot. It is merely the last major piece outlining the infinite setting of Scion. That's where I was saying before, we have your origin, your hero, your demigod, and now your god character. The various pantheons. All the pantheons of Scion can be used in these ways. As for the pantheons, there are the Bahala, which are the gods of the Scion region of the Philippines. There's the Ilhim, which are the gods and people of the world towards unity. Oh, this seems more centralized, I guess. Then you have the Ku, which are the hailing from Central American gods of the Mayans. Palas, which are of the Buddhist religion. They're the divine protectors. And the Zemi, who are gods of the Caribbean that protect the Taino people. So what's in this book? We did do the overview of the various chapters. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. Media, stuff that inspired. You have The Wicked and the Divine, American Gods, which I have read, and it's a wonderful book. I haven't seen the TV series yet. You have The Sandman, the Inheritance trilogy, Small Gods by Terry Pratchett, and Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Always good to check out the inspiration. Also, the artwork is badass for this book. I really like how different it is. So we do have the ready-made characters. I'm assuming these people might be like, names might have been chosen by people during the Kickstarter or the backer kit, whichever one they did for this. Got some Thunder God here, a god of Thor. Eric Donner, god of manners, protection, repairs, and thunder. We've got Dr. Hazan Ibn Luki, who is a god of fire, health, refugees, and mother of Sleipnir. You've got Rashmi, who has 2 heads, goddess of fire, knowledge, and physics. I think there are a lot of gods of fire. I feel like there's Rhiannon Firesuit, goddess of diplomacy, firefighters, and truces. Sahutek Emmanuel Montero is no more. The god of fire, the day, heat, volcanoes, and life after death. The beginning of the story at origin level, possibly the creating of the gods for the character, might seem ridiculously far off in the future, and at the moment, it probably is. A satisfying chronicle which covers visitation through apotheosis likely will not play out over a weekend unless you plan one hell of a weekend. So how does one shepherd a chronicle from before your scions, even though they rise from divine parentage, to the moment they all stand astride the world? And how do you do that in a way that makes narrative sense? Beginning to end. You starting out the chronicle with the intention to follow the same origin characters from the moments before their visitation to when they become gods, brings them into some interesting challenges. We can cover that later. This is in detail. Just know that you can do it from that era. You can go from origin all the way to God. Your heart is the most precious thing. Bleed. Oh, this is more protection for yourself during game. These are your safety tools. Cover them just briefly. Lines and veils, everyone knows those. The X card, the stoplight system, such as saying like green for good, yellow for I'm a little bit in danger. I'm fine, but I'm a little on the edge, and then red for just stop. Story Path Ultra actually does have a few more interesting safety tools that sort of like people have talked about, but in any case, skip over here to Apotheosis. At the end of the apotheosis stage of a chronicle, a successful demigod achieves apotheosis and becomes finally, fully, and completely divine. The Scion goes through their last metamorphosis while becoming a demigod, cause profound changes to their physical form. Stepping through the final form into godhood does away with this shape entirely. The body which carried them through their life to this point now falls away, and they become a construct of pure ichor, containing the Scion's spirit, bedecked with all its mantles. Most gods take this time to form a complete physical form rather than simply hanging out in the immaterial spirit form. The Loa form, the most prominent exception to this. Apotheosis. Before she gets there, however, she must successfully navigate apotheosis. Okay, so you have the second call in which the demigod reenacts an early challenge of his post-visitation life in a new, more dangerous way. And becomes drawn into one of the early myths of the god he wants to emulate. The lesson of this stage is to let him reflect on his progression so far and to announce the fate that he is already to pursue apotheosis. This is always the first step and culminates in the act of gaining Legend 5, a deed undertaken while the Scion is still a hero. The parting, in which the demigod discovers the extra burdens that fate binding places on gods and glimpses along divine restrictions on behavior in the mortal realm. Along the way, he usually gains a powerful fate bond with a mortal or lesser mythical being, one that lasts beyond even death. Then we have the threshold, in which the demigod explores her connection to her callings to solidify her identification with them. Most Scions, it's one of the less dangerous stages, with the emphasis on playfulness, fluid identities, and change instead of the harsher lessons of responsibility. The descent, in which the demigod starts to shed his strongest associations with the mortal world. This can mean literal journey to the underworld, but it can also be a period of isolation or loss of a loved one through the death or betrayal. The Theophany. The demigod gathers all of her resources and talents to face one myth-defining challenge. This is... If she succeeds, she achieves apotheosis and becomes a god. If she fails, she dies, and her unfinished mantle goes free until some other demigod takes it up to try again. This stage isn't a lesson, it's the final exam. No matter what route a character takes through the other stages, the Theophany always happens last. If a Scion succeeds in his last stage, they reach the legend score of 9 and a form of immortality. Molding the divine self. Ymir is a transgender titan. He transformed his body to suit himself in the process of ascending divinity. This talent is not restricted to him, nor indeed to a particular stage of Scion's ascent. From the moment of their first visitation, all Scions may reshape their bodies at the whim to affirm their gender, including acknowledging its fluid nature if applicable. This ability may be invoked at any time and requires one turn to enact in an action sequence. That's pretty cool. When your brain is there's a lot of information about transgender identity in this, which makes sense. Also, trying to see through a transgender person's affirming actions is a real jerk move, so don't do it. Okay, we've got what now? Just because your character achieved apotheosis doesn't mean the chronicle ends. You can continue playing your newly divine characters as long as you'd like. It does, however, mean that your character faced different challenges, and creating fulfilling narratives requires thinking about these challenges and how you choose to approach them. Once your character becomes gods, it's time for Session 0, Part 2. Plan a time to sit down together and review the themes you decided on so many sessions ago. Do those themes still fit your campaign world, with striding deities, or should you revise them? If you find yourself saying no, these are all still great, that's fantastic. But before you move on to new adventures, really give yourself time to think about whether these goals, those themes, the things you strove to illuminate and illustrate really fit those characters anymore. Story guiding incarnations. A story guide who's running a game not only for a group of gods, but also for several of their incarnations, may quickly find herself having to keep track of several mini arcs worth of side characters and their plot threads. Running one game takes a lot of time, dedication. Following this advice may help you wrangle the various threads and keep your players engaged at the table. While the main game is the focus, an incarnation's action can help the god accomplish his goal and move the plot along. At the onset, ask the players whose gods are spinning off incarnations some questions to help set their expectations and give you an idea of what kind of preparation you'll need to do from session to session. I just realized there was no lexicon for this, so incarnations are essentially like the lesser aspects of the gods. Like they're basically like your heroes and things, I believe. Like heroes and demigods are incarnations, I think. What's the elevator pitch for this incarnation stories? The character might be simply setting off to walk the world and not need more than the occasional cutscene describing her adventures. If she's pushing up her sleeves and trying to get the bottom of the mystery for the Pantheon, does the player have ideas of how she'll go about the task? Let's see. I'm just double checking stuff so I'm not talking out my butt. If you're spending a lot of time with incarnations, regularly revisiting character goals can help tie several branches together. Just because the gods are handling potentially overworld-shaking issues doesn't mean they can't still have the banned deeds on their to-do list. Considering asking players to break the gods' banned deeds down into smaller parts. Are there short-term deeds the incarnations might be able to accomplish? Add those to the incarnations character sheet. Incarnations deeds don't have to be restricted to those of her patron god. If the task's tied to her to one of the other player characters, encourage those connections. Okay. The player characters inside their gods have a banned deed of Restore the Seasons. They break it up into a handful of stages and small deeds. One of them, Deal with the Demon Holdup in the Dam, will bring a measure of relief to the local farms. Casey's character, Donna, is the closest to its location. Casey adds Deal with the Devil to Donna's character sheet as a short-term deed. Okay. We did talk about fate bindings. I'm going to skip a little bit ahead, and we're going to go into Game of Immortals. We did talk about after apotheosis, incarnation allows the god to send a fragment of themselves back to the mortal world, working to fulfill some divine mission. These can range from short-term excursions to entire lifetimes, granting a god the opportunity to remember their mortal origin and intervene in the world affairs without risking fate binding. Okay, so that's what an incarnation is. Divine Rule provides a framework for far-reaching plans for the gods as they jockey for position within the overworld. Rather than relying on their skills and attributes, Divine Rule centers the actions on the gods' purviews, callings, legendary titles, and using them as tools to construct realm-shaping miracles. Plans enacted through Divine Rule operate at a vast, ambiguous timescale, often tying up a god's free legend for days, weeks, or even longer as they work to address large-scale change in their divine realms. Cults and religion help to shape a god's macro-level interactions with humanity and the world at large. From the other side of the altar, a newly risen god finds himself cast in the role of patron to hundreds, thousands, and millions of mortals, all the attendant influence and responsibility that implies. Cults are generally valuable as a source of interest, dramatic challenges for ascending characters, presenting them with difficult choices and perilous opportunities while allowing them to avoid the fate binding that the world might readily work upon them if they interfered in person. I do wonder, there were some I forget which show it was, but there was a show where a character got like godlike power and had to deal with the effects of that. I know like Supernatural, like season 15 or whatever the hell it was like very far away. Like they tended to have a lot of the characters get godlike abilities and then have to deal with that type of stuff. God. So we have a different talks about the gods versus gods, God versus mortals, God versus the Titanomachi. Titanomachi. I'm always bad at pronouncing these. Apologies. So we have gods love their mortal affairs. It's been said before, gods don't need humans, they need humanity, meaning that while the death of a favored mortal may be so tragic as to precipitate a minor apocalypse, it is humanity that keep gods anchored to the world, preventing them from becoming beings of instinct and purview like some titans. So you could have mortals lovers. This is especially true of new gods. The process of apotheosis is a dangerous and bitter one, earning the fledgling deity many enemies even as they cross the finish line to true godhood. Friends and family become easy targets for anyone looking to settle a score, especially while a god is still adjusting to their new profound power. We have the Taitomachi. Throughout their career as heroes and demons, Scions often act as valuable soldiers and agents against the never-ending war against Titans. By the time they reach apotheosis, many Scions have tangled with dozens of Titan spawn and Titan worshipping cults. Many emerge into the green halls of their astral overworld, either brimming with plans for how to end the war tomorrow or boiling over with frustration that their patrons turned peers allowed it to go on at all. The truth, at least, as most new gods come to know, is that the Titanomachi is a vast, exhausting, and perilous endeavor. What looked like simple skirmishes from the street could be only emanations of deeper, more complex maneuvers and counter maneuvers. Okay, so this is where you get into the Warhammer 40k, the Emperor of Mankind can't fight the Chaos Gods because the Chaos Gods are also fighting back and much better at making adjustments. There's a bunch of little stuff about the Titans. Titan is a political term, an organizing principle, and accusation. It is also a truth, a way of being for the divine, disentangling themselves from the anchoring and centering effect of humanity and choosing to be otherwise. So, capital D, Destroyer. Sometimes gods blur the line, taking on titanic aspects. Sometimes they turn Titan fully, and their legend echoes back, so that it was ever thus. Oh, that's bad. Don't become a Titan, people. Be kind. Rewind. So we have incarnations here, where we talk about incarnations and their gods. Rarely content to spend all their time in the overworld, a god may spin a piece of themselves into an incarnation. A god might send his incarnation to the world to recreate a myth, his action firing up the public's imagination and rekindling his popularity and drawing new practitioners to his religion. Gods who prefer to be more hands-on when it comes to worldly events send incarnations to oversee particularly sensitive missions. Even those who are the divine patrons, dozens of Scions, realize sometimes if you want to be sure something's done right, you don a mortal flesh and do it yourself. They frequently take on positions of authority. How the incarnation relates to the rest of the band depends on the god and their goals. Spinning off an incarnation is mostly a matter of will. The god makes the choice and her incarnation appears in the world. For some gods, it's not even a conscious decision. She thinks someone ought to do something about that, and her incarnation opens their eyes and gets to work. There's some flashier methods. How much the incarnation remembers about their godly nature depends both on the method of their incarnation and on what their divine maker intends for them to accomplish. Some arrive in the world with all the predecessors' memories and knowledge intact, while other gods feel like knowing too much is cheating and spin their incarnation with some key information missing. How can you experience life as a mortal to the fullest if you know that from the start you aren't one? Okay. Many times the god in their incarnation maintains some level of communication, though what form that takes varies. Birthrights such as Igjala from Hero allow the incarnation to call the god no matter where they are in the world. They can employ the services of guides to contact gods. This is weird because you're basically talking to yourself as an incarnation. Incarnations enter the world with a series of short-term and long-term deeds related to the god's plan for them. There's some purpose the god intended for them. This is like playing direct. So whereas Scion Origin is you playing as sort of a Scion who is like somehow related to a deity, Incarnation is basically you were playing that deity, but with some like blinders on the side, some like restrictions, a handicap, as it were. Like how I have to play Mario Kart sometimes by giving other people handicaps, and that is true. Totally true. Okay, we have Life of the World, Memory Thieves. Ooh, Memory Thieves. The god who created an incarnation isn't the only one who can observe her memories. Other gods and even other incarnations can do this as well. It is well known but little used practice since it runs the risk of escalating quickly and violently. So basically, if people start stealing the memories of each other, the other pantheons are going to be like, hey, you did it, so now I can do it too. So, incarnations in your game. Once characters have achieved godhood, the players might want to create incarnations as part of their continuing adventures. These escapades might be as simple as short check-ins with players detailing what their incarnation's goals are, how they are faring. They could also take on the form of side adventures for dealing with stories set in the world. So it seems like most of the god mechanics are going to be played outside of the world, but with incarnations you could play in the world. The god realms being where the god mechanics mostly come up, but incarnations get to do some of that. So when you create an incarnation, sketch out a primary characters who will only make cameo appearances or involved in cutscenes like vignettes. Don't need fully fleshed out character sheets. Sketch out their primary and secondary actions and use the Nemesis archetype stats from Scion Hero. So you have like this little tiny stat block of like primary pool is 11, secondary is 9, desperation is 6. You have 5 health, 4 defense, and 9 initiative. Okay. You have your concept. Ooh, it skips around. Paths. You do some callings and knacks. At the path stage, you determine your path, but your origin path is always incarnated. Your concept is basically why your god spun them off to begin with, as well as the short-term and long-term deed, and a deed for their band if they have one. Step 5, the knacks. Incarnated apples don't fall far from the divine tree. The character begins with at least 2 of the Patreon's 3 favored callings, as opposed to regular Scions who only need 1. These callings represent those aspects of herself and the god feels are most relevant for the purpose she's laid out for the incarnation. If the god didn't consciously spin off the incarnation, they may instead reflect the state of mind the god was in when it happens. They also begin with Legend 1. From incarnation to incarnate Scions. So you can spend decades having mortal affairs, building legacies, and performing legendary deeds. However, not all set out on the journey towards apotheosis. Maybe since they never experienced the first visitation, the second visitation eludes them. This doesn't mean it never happens. So you create an incarnation just for it to go to sort of reverse, and now you're going through apotheosis again? I mean, you don't have to. When a god dies or his mantle is sundered from his physical form, his extant incarnations become incarnate Scions. Players who wish to turn their incarnations into incarnate Scions may do so with their story guide's approval. This might reflect another part of the God story as he realizes the world has changed and needs a new, improved version of himself to be relevant. Okay. Divine rule. Prosaic actions within the divine realm are so effortless or strenuous as its divine inhabitants wish them to be. A god of hunt provides venison, fowl, and fixings for their guests' dinner as easily as breathing. A divine architect raises enormous palaces as a matter of afternoon interest. Mechanically, god-tier characters may choose to succeed at mortal trivialities unless they wish to make sport of it. In a realm they are native to or familiar with, this includes any additional effects generated by stunts or exceptional successes. In the world or unfamiliar realms, gods always act at scale 5, with Legend 12 gods acting at scale 6. However, interfering in the world in such a way risks serious fate binding and warping of divine nature that full gods are prone to, so to most avoid it, if at all possible, resorting to incarnating instead. So this makes sense. Basically, the gods can't really interfere with the mortal world at full strength, because if they do so, they basically create a lot of like extraneous connections to people and fate bindings, and also probably other gods are more likely to notice, which is why you use incarnating instead. Some lovely artwork. Divine sinews approaches to omnipotence. No matter a god's particular interests, abilities, and eccentricities, legend imbues them with mythic power and allows divine's intent to become world-shaking action. The mantle of a god gives them many ways to do this, channeling their power through resonant aspects of their identity. Okay. I think I'll get into some more mechanics in a bit, hopefully. How do I do it? A summary. Your approach determines how you do something on a divine scale. Approaches differ in what they require to work. Divine fiat. You do it with the expenditure of raw divine power. Just spend legend and gain that much effect. However, it's obvious on a divine scale and expensive, since you always have to spend a legend. Miraculous investment. You call upon your power over a purview to act through miracles related to that purview. Imbue legend, mark the applicable purview, and gain that much effect. It's especially good at propagating purviews. If you're making an ongoing realm condition, gain an extra point of effect. You have access to a stunt to make permanent realm changes. However, it's notable both to local divinities and masters of the purview. So basically, you can make changes within your realm. However, if you make it permanent, people are going to, or if even in temporary, probably, people in the same purview will know that you did something here. You're better with your innate purviews, which give you another additional point of effect, or stunts when making realm conditions, which can support up to 3 investment. You have your title investment. You can call upon the power of appropriate tile you possess, imbue legend, and mark the title to gain that effect. If you're opposing someone, you gain an extra point of effect. If you affect the world directly, you can at the cost of fate binding. However, any use of a title investment is obvious, for each title can only support 1 investment at a time. So that's where, if you're going to affect the world, this is what's going. You're going to probably use your title, which is going to cause some fate binding. Working together, you can contribute with multiple gods, but each must abide by the limits of the approach they choose and pay the relevant costs. Okay. There's some subtle approaches which are you're using your investment. You can use your personal ability through one of your callings, imbue legend, and mark the relevant calling to gain that much effect. It's not obvious, and you can buy a stunt to even make it less noticeable. However, for each calling, you can only use it a number of times equal to a number of dots you have in that calling. okay, so if you have like a calling at 5, you can only use it 5 times in that personal investment approach. Moving the realms, not going to go into that. What Divine Rules play summary. Solving problems. Spend effect to curtail ongoing issues that exist independently of another divine being. This seems like a lot of how you can do some crazy stuff with basically changing how the world works. How do I track all of this? Problems, realm conditions, even particularly long-running conflicts or contests will often involve tracking shifting values of effect, putting it into solving or shaping them, as well as other effects such as power stunt. For groups playing in person, index cards are a simple, excellent tool for keeping track of things. Most virtual tabletops will offer similar note tracking tools, such as Wikipedia or other documents through Google Docs or similar services. You know, it'd be a great way to start a campaign. Start your players off as gods, but have them only use like parts of the rules initially, and then have them like the god characters be destroyed in some way, and now they're or captured in some way, and now they're playing the pre-visitation or the visitation characters. That'd be a fun way to do it. I guess the problem would be your players must have like the same pantheon, or maybe the pantheons were working together in some way. This is where like tracking stuff is crazy. Okay. Excuse me. Sorry. Here's some rules for directly being in direct conflict with another god. Sorry. You may try and acquire a mantle in its entirety if they use nothing but the stolen mantle's calling. Okay. Divine wounds. Lasting harm inflicted to your divine body or by other divinities is tracked through divine wounds. Divine wounds can be inflicted by a direct assault action, failure deeds for your calling, or attempts to break and avoid fate binding. Wounded character picks a title, purview, or calling to apply the divine wound tool. You can now not use wounded traits or their associated supernatural powers. So as you get divinely wounded, you start losing access to things. Oh, that's bad. Deicide. To murder a god, deal all of their calling and title divine wounds, and then inflict one more. We now know how to kill a god. Go forth and kill the deities. I am skipping a little bit away on this because we only have 15 minutes left, and I really want to show off the cool different powers you get as part of as being a god. So we'll skip all the way down here to birthrights and knacks. We'll cover some of these. So we've got the fate binding conditions and rules imperiled. In addition to the rules established in Demigod, imperil fate bindings, this condition may be applied to a character not present in the scene. Okay, so this is some additional stuff here. Doomed. When gods attract the sacrifices of stronger folk, those individuals become doomed. Powerful allies, friends, or even lovers who are doomed at the same fate as a canary or martyr will give up their life, even if it's temporarily, for the sake of a god. Avoidance. When the god does not give the doomed the opportunity to sacrifice himself on the god's behalf, they immediately gain one divine wound. Any stunts chosen by the story guide on this roll do not target the doomed, but must target something else of equal importance to the Scion. So this is where these fate bindings will cause stuff to happen that the god probably doesn't. So you could have, for instance, maybe a ally from a lower tier of play has gained the Doom condition. And you, as a player, might not want to see that character die because you have so many fond memories with them. But because they have the Doom condition, they have to die unless you want to take a divine wound and lose access to one of your callings or abilities. There are a bunch of different ones. There's some interesting ones here. Let's go into some birthrights. We've got the Hammer of the Gods. From the time that a Scion experiences their visitation up to the moment of their apotheosis into godhood, they have been aided by their birthrights, creatures, guides, followers, and relics who have grown alongside with them in both utility and power. These birthrights can and often do become part of a god's legend, attaching themselves perhaps a specific mantle or incarnation. So we've got here Mjolnir, the Thor's hammer. It is a 4-dot relic, birthright. Purviews, epic dexterity, epic strength, and sky. Often imitated but never truly replicated, the true Mjolnir is a sight to behold. It radiates power with ripples of electricity cackling as soon as it is handled. Crafted by the dwarf brothers Atyr and Brock, it is part of a fuller regalia, including a belt and iron gloves worn by Thor during his greatest adventures. Those seeking to emulate or even seize the mantle of Thor have sought after the true pieces as proof of their metal and prowess. So it has a +1 enhancement, 1 to defeat opponents of equal or greater tier enhancement. It has a knack. The Scion imbues a number of legendary points into Mjolnir and gains that many dots of might per scene. This can exceed might 5. And it has some tags to it, which are equipment tags or weapon tags. But it does have a requirement to fully unlock the legendary power of Mjolnir. The user must be equipped with the I can't read that. The power belt, otherwise it remains inert and access to its purviews and acts are restricted. Should have a requirement that if you have the gloves, you can catch it. Or bring it back to yourself. You can forge new ones. We have some new birthrights with creatures. Let's skip down to one that is of a particular interest, such as the Laughing Falcon. While others may be content to send a text message or email to communicate with one another for the queue, there is only one way to send a message, via the Laughing Falcon. Why does the Falcon laugh? No one can say. Yet when you absolutely positively need to send an encrypted message, the best way to do it is by giving the message to a louse, who is swallowed by a toad, then eaten by a snake, and then finally consumed by a falcon. The process is reserved to reverse to deliver the message safe and sound. Oh, God. So suddenly a falcon sits down in front of you, then vomits up a snake that vomits up a toad that vomits up a louse. Oh, that got me. I don't know why that got me. You have followers. Tattooed raiders. From time to time, the tattooed raiders looked to the horizon and took to the seas in search of riches to bring back home. But times have changed, and they changed with them. No common pirates, they instead take their guidance from the goddess of war, who believes that the best raid is one that is carefully planned, rather than the high seas or corporate jungle. These raiders are always ready. Whether it's the high seas or corporate jungle, these raiders are always ready. Okay, and you get some tags like entourage, heavy, knack, and the knack is close the gap. Okay. We'll continue down here to the knacks. I did really like looking at the knacks for, you can get stuff like, let's look at Judge. I really like the Judge. House of Law. Your chamber or places of judgment are beacons of light and order across the land. Imbue legend to consecrate a courthouse or similar jurisprudence. Those attempting investigation actions to determine the truth within its walls benefit from additional scale. This may create a realm condition that reduces the cost of fortune, order, or divine rule actions taken through it by one. This is the type of thing like city building things where you could effectively manipulate, like do some god building, god power like building in a city and be like, oh, I have a favored Scion here. They work at the courthouse. Suddenly, this courthouse is imbued with my light, which gives them +1 scale to their investigation actions, which is pretty nice. You have the Lover, A Place of Joy, Kitchen Table, Royal Garret, Artist Studio, Petal Strewn Bower. Wherever you stir emotions, the eddies carry others along the way. Imbue legend to consecrate a place of emotion and fellowship. Anyone attempting to convey heartfelt emotions to allies or others may care about in your place of joy benefit from 1 additional scale. So you can do some more realm conditions and things of that nature. We have some Titanic Calling next. Another price to pay. When you warn someone off of a course of action, the price of ignoring you is painful indeed. When you take a complicated action, create an additional painful price complication at the same rating. The enemy suffers an injury and -1 to the defense if the complication isn't resolved. Oh, and it can stack. That's pretty crazy. We do have the purviews. So for the universal purview, we have eminence of your purview. You bring yourself into perfect alignment with your purview, tapping into a miraculous power directly from its source. This is accompanied by a transformation, though it needn't be dramatic. Some gods become walking maelstroms of their purview's raw energy, while others simply take on the ineffable sense of that purview as it seeps into their posture and gestures. So it gets some benefits. You can work any number of marvels for your purview and do not need to spend any legend to do so. Marvels that would normally require imbued legend instead last until the end of the scene. This costs 2 legend, by the way, which is a pretty hefty cost. I don't even know how you regain legend as a god. You can attempting to use your purview must make a clash of wills, rolling their legend against yours directly. You gain enhancement on these rolls. If they fail, you choose to smother their power or twist it, inflicting a +3 complication on its use. Pretty potent, especially because you're going to be going up against probably lower tier enemies. I think going up against a demigod, you're probably pretty detrimental to them, but if you're going up against other gods, this is like at the same level, but still 3 complication is pretty high. Though 3 complication in Story Path, not Story Path Ultra, might be not as high as I think. I really liked, if you go down here, we have the the beauty. All else falls away. If you are so beautiful or terrifying that everyone else fades into the background, characters that perceive you must overcome a +2 complication to undertake any action at all in your presence. There's also a lover specific. Forget yourself before me. Your presence is so overwhelming that those who see you forget even themselves. Upon failing to buy off the complication, targets of this boon gain a condition that causes them to forget everything but you. Oh, so these are like, if you have another purview along with it, you get a bonus effect. That's pretty cool. Oh, the Express Your Truth was one I was thinking of, where you can basically touch someone, and then their body now reflects their how they feel about themselves from their inner body or inner self. It's the equivalent of the residual self-image from the Matrix, but I like it. I like it as an idea. you basically make someone feel so so comfortable in their own body, like they transform into their ideal self-image, and they feel so comfortable in that body. They get bonuses for being so good at it, for feeling like complete. Okay, they have a purview for fertility, and now I'm just like, oh god, is this immaculate conception? Grounds for discussion. Okay, nope. This is just, you make it a great place to discuss new ideas. The atmosphere is great, and everyone's like closer to neutral and less to negative attitudes rise and positive attitudes fall. So it's basically just, yeah, we're keeping the peace here. Good. I can't go over everything. I wish I could. We have like 5 minutes left. Um, you know what? Let's look at some antagonists. So we've got some primordials. Primordials exists within yet outside of every pantheon. They came before the pantheons. They rose from the deep ocean, spun themselves out of air and earth, or embodied the night sky, the sun, the world itself. Many primordials eschew the struggles of gods against gods, existing in a sort of divine quasi-retirement. When they deign to rise from the resting place to fight, even the gods pay attention. They have like a giant pool of 15 dice. When comparing tiers for any mechanical purposes, primordials always count as one tier higher than their opponents in all circumstances. They cannot be decreased to a tier below one tier above the highest tier of the opponent. That is interesting. That keeps them pretty potent. Godhead. When encountering in their realms or something has truly gone haywire everywhere, one may encounter the god in their true form, irreplicable state. The godheads exist mean gods cannot die, though this isn't. The godhead's existence mean gods can die, though this isn't usually permanent, depending on how one defines die and permanent. Okay, so if you kill someone, but someone takes on his mantle, has he really died? It's the shit but Theseus argument. A godhead is native in his native realm and rules absolutely. He always counts as a tier higher than his opponents, unless the opponent is a primordial. Goliaths is any target that, reasonably speaking, a character could not disable or destroy within a scene. Okay. We have additional attack flares, social flares. These are all crazy. Pick on someone your own size. So you can increase your own scale to fight a god. These are all pretty potent. I'm not gonna lie. I definitely see putting players against some of these. So we even have rosters of divine antagonists. Apep. Oh, this is Apophis. If you want to have Apep go up against your players in Mythic Shards 4 colors, hey, we have a stat line for him. And he's a primordial. Oh, wait a minute. It might not have been Apep. It might have been someone else. In any case, you can use this step. Yep, God forms. It'd be fun having the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man be a god form. That's what they called them. I think they called them Destroyer forms in Ghostbusters. Artwork here is beautiful, by the way. Love it. And we get to the end of the book. There are character sheets, if I remember correctly. Okay, so you have the god character sheet. which still has all of the skills and attributes. Your scale is going to be off for most of it, I am assuming. You have your legendary titles, your purviews, your fate bindings. And you'll notice that next to your purviews and legendary titles and callings, you have a little square box. That is your injuries, because you no longer have injuries. When you have a divine injury, you cut off your access to a calling or a legendary title. You also have your legend tier, which is already filled up to 9 at the very least. But of course, you can spend it and regain it. I do want to look up regaining legend. Oh, here's one. At the end of the scene, the god regains 1 legend if the incarnation had to make a difficult choice or overcome a significant danger in protecting her loved ones. There is title investment, which you immediately suffer fate binding but regain an additional point of legend. So fate binding can be used to regain legend. If a god either resolves an issue related to a prayer or capitalizes upon an opportunity presented by it, she regains 1 legend. Well, that's good. So if you're able to talk to your faithful people, you can regain legend. There are also some special abilities, it looks like, for different pantheons. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this. Again, I'm just going to go through and show off some artwork. Beautiful artwork as always. There is a giant bunny in this picture, and I am totally for it. Let's see what else we got here. Some beautiful things. I hope this gave you an idea if Scion God is something that you want to check out. I'll put a link to it from DriveThruRPG here if you want to check it out. It's an affiliate link, but you can always check it out there. And of course, a reminder, we have StoryPath Ultra Backer Kit ending soon, so check that out. Right now, we are at 5205! That means we get the dice bot! I'm happy. You made me happy. and it might not have been you directly, but if you are supporting StoryPath Ultra, I am very happy because the dice bot is something I am very excited to see. That's all you'll get from me for the moment. Additionally, we have Curseborn coming up next month. I'm going to be covering Curseborn all of October if I can help it. Hopefully I'll have time to maybe even run an actual play or something or be part of it. Thank you so much, and we are going to go over to one of the possible other streams that are currently going on. Also, if you're not part of the Discord, check out the Discord. There is, of course, a monthly game night, which is the Onyx Path game night, where you can get, I believe, a coupon for playing in the games. I think it's a $10 coupon if you go through the Discord. Anyone who's running a Story Path or Onyx Path related property, you can get a discount for their Start Playing account. Check it out. I highly recommend. There's a Curseborn game that is going on around that time. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a good one, and I can't wait to cover Curseborn next week. Woo! I'm one of the first ones. Okay, transition.